hunting season is upon us. Don't get me starting about hunting season. We're not going to talk about the whole usurpation of Second Amendment rights, only to sell it back to the citizen in the form of a hunting license so that they can use it against the king's deer, and don't even get me started about the federal duck stamps or anything like that. Or the fact that some states have additional draconian regulations on what kind of weaponry you can use to effectuate that cause, like here in the state of Ohio, even though we hunt, at least my family hunts, on land that we pay property taxes on. I'm not sour at all, am I? Well, because of a lot of those regulations, the cartridge that I have chosen to use for the last several years is the 350 Legend cartridge. It checks all the boxes, lightweight, cost-effective, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And the weapon that I use to get that done is the Ruger American in 350 Legend. I've done a couple videos on that particular rifle over the years. And it's a okay gun. You know, it gets most of the things done, but there are some pretty egregious problems with the Ruger American, and some of those I have a fix for here for you today. This is my Ruger American in 350 Legend that has been outfitted in the new WOOX furniture. This is a drop-in chassis for the Ruger American. Pull a couple bolts, drop it in, put the bottom metal on, and you're off to the races. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Cue the cinematic intro. The main gripe that has been vigorously voiced across the internet since the introduction of the Ruger American is that almost all of the Ruger American stocks are bent in some way. And it leads to contact with the barrel up here at the front. I have another Ruger American that I'll roll in here. This one was exceptionally bad, but even so, we are talking about shooting something the size of a deer at a couple hundred yards. It doesn't have to be a super precise rifle, but we do know that when the stock is touching the barrel at more than the intended places, when you shift things around on the handguard, including your hands and how you've applied pressure to the rifle, that can translate to harmonic changes that result in downrange impacts, right? Well, the WOOX chassis here, normally when we do a fitment test to see whether or not the stock is touching the barrel or not, we use a dollar bill. Well, we get to skip the dollar bill today, and here's a piece of cardboard. And there's plenty of room all the way around that thing to ensure that it isn't touching the barrel in an inappropriate place, negatively impacting the accuracy of the rifle. So in addition to eliminating that interference there on the barrel, there's some other things that they've done here over the kind of stock that the folks at Ruger drop their gun into. The first is they've included this beautiful wood furniture on the front and the rear here that has these M-lock reinforcements in here. So these are made out of aluminum, and they're 1, 2, 3, 4 on 3 sides, so you can do the bipods and the other things that would have not been possible or have been pretty difficult to accomplish in the original stock. So that's a huge plus, particularly if you've waded into the like kinetic development group stuff that has the M-lock attachment that you just literally just push in and it clips on. So you can smack a bipod on that thing in less than a second, and same thing, pull it off if you want to. Same thing with your lights and things like that if that's what you want to do. As far as the rear here, the grippage, the stippling right here is very aggressive. Like, I would not rub this up against my cheek, for instance. It would be pretty rough. So that is machined directly into the wood, which is labor intensive, to say the least, when it comes to something like finishing wood. When you're doing this with polymer, you can bake that into the mold. When it's in wood, you have to actually machine that. As far as the rear here, there is the capacity to include shims here. So if you want to enhance the length of pull, then it is possible to do that. You just pop this off. The screws are hidden holes in the butt pad there. And you pull that off, put the shim in, and it increases your length of pull. Also, you don't have to use the traditional kind of FUD-tastical stock or sling, excuse me, because in the stock we have QD points. It does not lock, but it is a full swivel, and it is a QD. So if you wanted to use some of your more modern slings, then the capacity is there to do that. WOOX has chosen to go with the AICS pattern magazine. We will return to this slightly. I have some critiques to issue on the choice of the AICS magazine. We already have an existing magazine that's pretty darn refined for the 350 Legend. That's a 350 Legend specific problem. But as far as their bottom metal is concerned, they've got increased room here for the gloved fingers, and I would also say that the trigger guard is substantially beefier on their bottom metal than what comes with the standard Ruger American. And their magazine release is this huge dongle here. So it's an ambidextrous, it hangs out both sides, so it's really easy to get a hold of and knock those magazines out. Fantastic execution on that aspect of the chassis as well. And that brings me up to critiques. What would I change about this design? And I would say we've already done a fair amount of critiquing on the Ruger American and the 350 Legend cartridge in the past, so we'll refine our remarks to only the WOOX side of the house. So the first thing that I would say is, in my professional opinion, I think that the choice to go with the AICS magazine was a fundamental mistake. We already have a 350 Legend magazine that exists, and it has been refined to work across all the platforms. The concept that we should switch to the AICS magazine, in my opinion, is not something that was thoroughly thought out, because the Ruger American and 350 Legend comes with a 350 Legend magazine, and to switch to an AICS magazine is not something that the user would likely have laying around. In fact, I would say that this is a 5.56 magazine, and because it is a Magpul magazine, it means that it is a piece of garbage. You can see that as far as fitment is concerned, it slops around in here a fair amount, and because of that, we had some feeding problems. I was able to get it to feed off of another AICS magazine that I had, but I was unwilling to mod that magazine specifically for this video because I need that one for the other weapon. It is not a 350 Legend. So in order to get this AICS magazine from Magpul to feed, I had to grind down the tabs that allow the cartridges to sink down in there. This is a single stack magazine versus the standard 350 Legend magazine is a 10-round magazine. So even though, or excuse me, a double stack magazine, got a little bit ahead of myself there. So even though this and the AR magazine are both 10-round magazines, this one is considerably larger and hangs out a lot more than the AR magazine because, again, it is a double stack magazine. In fact, the 5 and 10 round use the same magazine body. They just put a stopper in them to keep the 5-round limited at 5. So you can't get it much smaller than was already existing, and that's nice when we're talking about a hunting application. This thing works okay. And so to mod it, we had to grind the tabs off, and then we had to bevel the shelf here so the cartridges could actually come out. Not a fan of the 5.56 AICS magazine, particularly from Magpul. The other brands are meh. In addition to that, the WOOX setup for 350 Legend did not come with a magazine. So if you have forced people to change to the AICS pattern, then you got to include the AICS pattern magazine with the rest of the components. So if you're saying that this is your setup for 350 Legend, then forcing the end user to go out and purchase a magazine just to get their thing to run is not along the ethical lines that I operate on. So WOOX, if you're going to stick with this and not go to an AR pattern magazine, you need to include a functional magazine with, at least one, with the chassis when you ship it. So those are really my two major complaints about the execution of this by WOOX. Again, I've said this previously, I find that the fit and finish of this are fantastic. The execution on the wood and the stippling in various locations, fantastic. I think they did a great job. It's just this little thing here, I think they need to spend a little bit more time on this to get that fully refined down the road. But if you're already a 5.56 AICS magazine person, then maybe this isn't as important to you. But I see people who already have 350 Legend and have established the rifle the way that it operates and have a bunch of the magazines for it, swapping out to an AICS pattern is going to be a discouragement for them, and I implore WOOX to revisit this and go in the direction of an AR. It doesn't mean that you have to eliminate this completely for people who want to use the AICS, but you ought to make it more acceptable for folks that are already established in the caliber, because there will be resistance to this. Anyway, that's what I've got for the WOOX chassis. Did that on purpose. Relax.
This isn't my first experience with WOOX. I have another one of their chassis my 6.5 Creedmoor sits in, and I'm very happy with it. I'll have that video linked in the relevant places for you guys to go check out if you want more information on that type of model that they offer. Tell me what you think about the choice to go to the AICS over the AR. Was this something that they should have done?